Hey. Um, so writing has been my first love. And um, when I come to think about things, when I get really excited or impassioned or ready to mobilize, um, and I go to put my pen to paper, I can't anymore. Um, I just can't. And when I do, I don't capture the depth and the passion of the things that I want to be saying. So this morning even, Um, I ran a workshop, or I co-facilitated a workshop with four other brown boys, called Calling Out Brown Boys. And it was about creating infrastructure change. And I felt really good about it. Um, I think folks got what they needed to get from it. And at the end, I was left with all of these feelings. And some of my personal work is trying to learn how to feel the feelings. Um, but in feeling the feelings, I immediately noticed that um, it brought up jealousy around my partner. Um, not of others, like flirting with him or whatever, but specifically my own jealousy toward my partner. Um, in in that in seeing him, um, I I feel the rejection of my community. So I had it, I need to take some time to undo that and figure out what that was about. And realizing that some of that is that, like, actually a lot of that is not about him. Not only is it not about him, it's not about our relationship. Some of it's my own internalized depression. So some of it is not feeling like I can speak up or or talk about the things that I want or desire with regards to support. Um, and I feel like that's internalized by my history of just like growing up a young brown girl and learning from the women in my life that you suck it up and you make that shit happen. Um, that you survive. You take care of your family and you survive. Um, which has got me to the places that I've been. Which has led me to being a really awesome, like, young brown dude. Um, and in doing that, I don't feel like I can ask for support, or that I should ask for support, or validation for the work that I do. Um, so I guess what it got me thinking about was not only my femme identity, um, but also the things that I experience as being valued in queer and radical spaces. Um, so I often don't feel comfortable or validated in queer and radical spaces, um, because I think the things that I witness as being valued are people that speak up immediately and that speak out and that are extroverts and that can take up space, and there's a beauty to that, um, and also the expectation of vulnerability. So I experience lots of radical spaces as like this expectation that you are going to be human, and that bringing that humanity to the space makes your shit real, and people snap for you and they love that shit and it's great. And that's not all there is, right? Um, and there are quiet leaders, and there are silent folks, and there are people that are just supporting. There are the people that are holding the space. Um, there are, like, while folks are out there, and I associate some of this with feminists, but not completely. Like, while folks are doing the quote unquote hard work, they're the people that are supporting. They're the people that are holding this, like, the facilitation space. There are people that are holding our organizers when they get home. There are the people that are cooking dinner and doing Reiki and yoga and having fucking knitting circles or whatever it is that your queer community is doing. But that those folks are not valued or validated in the same way. Or at least I don't see them valued or validated in the same way. And there's something really hard about that. And I think about it as entrenched in a fucked up desire for masculinity, in that, you know, the communities that I am often in, the desire is for a trans masculine person. And sometimes in those trans masculine spaces, the desire is for that cis boy who will validate this masculinity. And we're all just searching for this fucking masculinity that is unattainable and completely invalidating of the other work. That when we, or my experience is that, like, when we do that, when we, like, are only desiring of these things, then the rest of us fall by the wayside. Or at least the work that we're doing falls by the wayside. So I had to sit with that, and I needed to, like, I came back and I was like, actually, you know, I'm having all of these feelings around my partner, and it's not that I'm having feelings around my partner, it's that my partner is beautifully human. You know, even if he happens to, like, be offensive in the moment, it's out of earnest beauty and, like, honesty, and he's just trying to figure out how to make it. And in doing so, is sharing his stories and his excitement and his passion, and it's so loud and it's so great, and in addition to being so human, he's also this, like, quintessential, like, desired masculinity, where he, like, in those queer spaces, he is that, like, trans masculine person, and when he's not trans masculine, like, in those trans masculine spaces, he's desired by those cis gay boys, and, like, and that's not bad. It just is what it is. But I guess I say all that to, like, to know that because of the, not because of him, but because trans masculinity or masculinities in general and is, like, exalted or codified or just, like, desired in this really fucking intense way, in addition to queer space being so desiring of this vulnerability, I couldn't find space for myself. And that I was trying to figure out what it was, like, why I don't always feel desired in queer space, or why I don't always feel validated in queer space. And it wasn't about having a pity party for myself, but really trying to figure it out, and trying to figure out what was my shit. Like, what's my shit around not fitting in, and what's my shit around internalized depression, and what's my shit that I have to work out, and then what's the stuff that is my communities. You know? Like, why do I only see this value? Why is the only thing that's valued is this intense vulnerability? Is this, like, if you're not laying it on the line, then you're not being real, you're not being an activist, you are not being, when really, like, that shit's hard. And it's not easy. And in order to lay it out on the line like that, well, like, and, you know, people do have to do it. And the people doing it opens up space for more of us to do it. But not everybody can do it. Some of us are just robots and cyborgs and not fucking unicorns and not these, like, tactile mammal things. We have our shells about us. I have my shell about me. And that those shells have served to protect and to keep maintaining. And some of that is worth undoing. And some of that is my work to undo. And radical queerness doesn't always have to be steeped in vulnerability. I didn't consent to being fucking vulnerable when I walked into a radical space. You know? And while we have to have space for the folks that are human, that are willing to be beautifully flawed in public, I guess, like, I'm calling for space for the rest of us that don't want to always wear our heart on our sleeve, and don't always want to be vulnerable, and don't always want to do it, because we're doing that work when we can, if we're ready. Like, it's hard work, and we all have our work to do. Yeah, we all have our work to do. And I guess, what do you do with a call out but just to say, like, hey, radical space, I don't need to tell you about my whole history to be radical, and I don't always need to be willing to speak up to be radical. That, like, silent visionaries are necessary too, and that folks doing support are necessary too, and that the appreciation and validation should be there also. I think it's really important to begin to undo that shit in our radical spaces too, because the validation of only the doing and not just the being is steeped in patriarchy too, is steeped in capitalism too. I don't know. I'm gonna try to undo some of it and figure out what's mine and what's my community's, and how I can try to do some of that work, not just for me, but for us. So, can we do this?